Last June, when we last spoke, the Russia-Ukraine war was just 3 months in. Now it's over a year. Did you expect this war to continue this long? And how has it changed global geopolitics? How has it changed your job in the last year?
Well, it was, I don't think it's a fair question to say, did you expect something to happen or not? Because a lot of people didn't expect the conflict to happen at all. But many things have changed. Many things have changed because the West has changed. Definitely, Europe has changed. Russia's relationship with the West has changed. I think that has other consequences. My sense is Russia's relationship with Asia will consequently change because it will turn more eastwards than it has done in its history for a long time. In many ways, issues like energy security, food security have come to the fore. It's also opened up a bit of a north-south divide. So at the moment, you have an east-west friction and a north-south divide. So it's really made the world a much more difficult place.
So when you say the world has become a much more difficult place, a country like India, we are the voice of the global south. We also have very deep linkages with the West and, of course, with the East. How does India play these deep divisions?
Well, we are, to a great extent, the voice of the global south because I think, one, there is a natural empathy from our similar history, but also because we have made an effort. I mean, it's not something which just happened by itself. You've had G20 summits before. To the best of my knowledge, no other country said, okay, we are 20 countries around the table. There are 180 countries which are not around this table. So should we make an effort to find out what their expectations are of us? I think, to the best of my knowledge, we are the first country to have done that. And we actually, starting with Prime Minister himself and, 5 of us, including Piyush, who was here before me, we all spoke to our counterparts. We actually consulted 125 nations with this one question, which is, we're going into G20, so tell us your key concerns and what is it we can articulate. That's one part of it. I think the other part of it is also, we have in this whole period since February 24th last year, we have tried to press for you can say, a return to peace, a return to negotiations. Yeah. In that sense, we have taken an independent position. I wouldn't say we're the only ones, but we certainly are among the more prominent ones. I do believe there is a real body of opinion out there, including in the G20. Mm-hmm. I would say a country like, say, Mexico or Brazil or Argentina or Indonesia, Saudi Arabia. I think many of them share similar views. Probably we've been the more outspoken among them. So both in terms of the north-south divide as well as the east-west polarization, I think we have tried to be the bridging force there. And the world needs somebody like us.
So you're talking about the G20, and of course this is a big year for India. The session is called India's G20 Moment. But how worried are you that there's so much fixation around a joint statement or the lack of it at the end of one? Because we had the foreign ministers meeting, you chaired that a few weeks ago. We had an outcome document, I believe, not a joint communique. Similarly, again, in the finance ministers meeting. Is there too much fixation on a joint statement?
Well, let me speak about the one which I chaired. We had a meeting. We had a outcome. We were negotiating essentially a 24-paragraph document. we had agreement on 22 paragraphs. There were 2 paragraphs pertaining to Ukraine, which basically was a carry forward of what happened at Bali, on which we could not get agreement. So, in a sense, we had to do a chair summary for the part we couldn't, and the outcome document for the part we could. Now, we have to be real about it. I mean, look at the state of the world. In this state of the world, if I could get 22 out of 24, so what's that in percentage terms?
About 95%.
95%. Okay, I never got 95% in school. So I would say, I was not dissatisfied. I would have obviously liked to get 100%, which would have been a novel experience for me. But
you were one of your toppers in the services. You went to a top university.
Well, we'll put that aside.
We'll park that aside.
No, but look, my point is what we really managed to do in the G20. I agree with you that one shouldn't be textually obsessed, though text does matter.
Sure.
I think our real contribution was to get the G20 back to the G20's real business. The G20 is not the UN Security Council. It's not the primary forum to debate international peace and security. I'm not saying international peace and security doesn't matter or doesn't have economic consequences. They do. But if you look today at the world, there are serious issues for the world to worry about. Food and energy security, green financing, Agenda 2030, trade issues, debt issues. We actually got something very novel for G20 to look at, and which I would like to build on, which is something called global skills mapping. That where are the skills in the world and where is the demand in the world? And they are in 2 different geographies.
Yeah.
So how do we actually put that together? I think that's a very interesting avenue that we have opened up for the G20. So the original mandate of the G20 was global growth and development. Now, last year, because of the Ukraine conflict, I think the conversations went in the direction of one issue. We would like to see, without disrespecting that particular issue, we would like to see a return to what we believe matters most to the roughly 200 countries of the world. And in that sense, I would say more than getting 22 out of 24. I would take satisfaction in the fact that the finance ministers meeting in Bengaluru and my meeting in Delhi, we were able to get the G20 back on track.
So you're confident that in September, when the leaders meet, a bulk of the conversations will be around the issues that you just outlined?
I would say, yes, that should be the progression. Every G20, there is a strong element of continuity. And there are some new ideas which come in. My sense is that you would see some ideas come in as well. Probably a bit early, may take a few meetings more for that to move. But I would certainly hope that by September, we would have a G20 leaders meeting which would look at the crucial issues pertaining to global growth and global development.
Sure. So one of the consequences, I guess, because of the war, perhaps it's been accentuated because of the war, is the world is increasingly looking like 2 blocks. You have the United States and its partners on the one side, and you have Russia and China on the other, most of all because of what happened last week when Xi Jinping went to Moscow. What do you make of that? And how, again, I come back to this, how does a country like India play that? Because we are in neither camp.
I think you are oversimplifying this, deliberately so, I understand.
The journalist occupational hazard.
Yes, absolutely, I get that. I'll tell you why you're oversimplifying it. It's not, Russia and China versus the West in that simplistic a term. After all, the primary partner, economic partner of China is the West. And the primary economic partner of the West is China. So they have an enormous amount of economic interface there. Where Russia is concerned, I would actually go back to my initial point, which is, I think one of the natural consequences of the Ukraine conflict is that Russia, a Eurasian power which has historically looked much more towards Europe, today finds its relationships with the West very, very difficult. So that Russia is inclined in many ways, therefore, to turn much more to the Asian side of Russia.
Yeah.
So I would predict fairly safely, and I think the numbers this year already bear me out, that you will see an intensification in Russia's relationship with Asia as a whole. Now, you spoke about Russia, China, but I would suggest to you that many other countries in Asia, maybe not economically all of the same size, but there are some fairly consequential economies. We would number one of them. And my expectation is you will see actually Russia also show that much more interest in developing its cooperation with India. Now, if you look at the India-Russia relationship, for the last 70 years, this has been one of the most steady relationships in international relations. That, take all the major players, Russia, China, Russia, West China, you've seen enormous volatility in their relationship. Whereas from 1955, which was the year Bulganin and Khrushchev came to India, you've actually had a very, very steady, even after the breakup of the Soviet Union, actually, there was a bit of a gap there, but very quickly the relationship came back to where it was. So I do think that, yes, you will see a change in Russia's posture and priorities, but I think for India, this is also in many ways an opportunity to grow its relationship, because our relationship with Russia has been very, the bandwidth is very narrow. It has been mainly defense, nuclear and space. The trade relationship with Russia historically has been not historically, at least in the last 2-3 decades, has been very, very narrow. And you can see that grow.
So, but when now, particularly when European countries say that, before the start of the war, Russia was supplying India less than 1% of your oil requirements, suddenly Russia is your top oil supplier, what do you say to that?
I'd say the market is the market. We all believe in markets, right?
Of course. Since you mentioned China, where are we on this, the border confrontation that happened? I believe out of the 7 odd points, 5, there has been disengagement, 2, there is still no disengagement. Just a broad understanding that, do you believe this has gone beyond the remit of army commanders? This has to be a political sort of dialogue and eventually moving to resolve the situation?
Look, first you have to understand what is the nature of the problem. The nature of the problem is that two militaries who generally were not 24/7 deployed at or on or very close to the LAC have done so to a great degree after May of 2020. Because pre-May of 2020, both militaries were primarily located in the depth areas where they had permanent bases, and then they would patrol out into the LAC. Now, in 2020, the Chinese breached that in violation of the 93-96 agreements, brought forces to the LAC. Obviously, we countered it. They stayed there, we stayed there. So as a result, you have a very, very intricate situation of very multiple close-up deployments, which by common sense sort of military assessments, a very dangerous situation to be. And that danger, of course, was we had to caution them And then, of course, Galwan happened, which only was proof that, how volatile the situation could be. Now, in this, we have, I met my counterpart in September 2020. He accepted that this was a dangerous situation. And since then, we've been trying to pull back the close-up deployments, not close-up deployment, the close-up forward deployments. But it can only be done if there is a mutual agreement. Because in the past, there have been occasions when, quite honestly, without revealing confidences, we may have made some such unilateral move and we found it was not necessarily responded to by the other side. So everything that we have done is on the basis of what we call the principle of mutual and equal security, which means, if we move back here, you will move back there. So now again, some canards have been floated that, buffer zones have been created in our patrolling areas. If I'm not able to patrol somewhere, he's also not able to patrol on that area. So it's, whatever we have been done is mutual, it is negotiated. Now, this is still unfinished work. There are places where we have this forward deployments. We continue to work away at it. I will only remind you when this started in the summer of 2020. If you took the cumulative analysis of this city, people told me this, we're not going to get a solution. The Chinese are going to do this, there's nothing you can do. I would say, please look at the last 2 to 3 years. My sense is the military has done what the military should do. The military has deployed. The military deployed in the COVID. The military is deployed round the year. The military is deployed through the winter. The military is deployed at great heights. And secondly, the military and diplomacy has worked in lockstep. Now, your question, should you not leave it to military commanders? First of all, it has never been left entirely to military commanders. The military commanders and the diplomats work as a team. Now, you cannot, to take away the military commanders is ridiculous, because the military commander is a person who knows the troops, who knows the topography, who actually knows what is mutual and equal security, which, by the way, means it's not like the distance on the map. There are many other factors which come into being. So, I would say, actually, in the last 3 years, this combo of military diplomacy and diplomacy working in lockstep has made progress. I accept that, we have not been able to sort everything out, but I also tell you that I have not, it's not like for me the end of the road. We will keep at it. When I met the new foreign minister, Chingang, in, Delhi on the sidelines of G20, it was something that we discussed. So it is work in progress. And I would certainly like to see more progress.
Since you mentioned you met the new Chinese foreign minister, there seems to be a bit of a change in Chinese diplomacy, if you will. You're seeing the moves that they're making vis-a-vis Iran and Saudi Arabia. They've also floated this 12-point peace plan with Ukraine. What do you make of it in general terms? Do you think that China is trying to play a major global role? And do you think that they're trying to sort of fill in a void they believe the US is leaving behind?
Look, no question that if you take any metric in the last 20, 25 years, I would say maybe even last 40 years, in many ways, China has gone up. So have we. Okay. Maybe not at the same pace. Frankly, if we had honestly had this government, I know this is a very biased statement, but if we had had a government like this 25, 30 years ago, maybe we would have gone up faster. But at least today, if you look at the progress in the last decade, do also see that just like China's reach and influence and equities grow, ours too are growing. But in this particular case, what you are mentioning, I think you have a very complex regional problem in which obviously China is involved. The parties have found China useful in whatever that they are doing. And that is something which is a fact.
do we recalibrate? Because we have huge energy requirements from there. We have a huge diaspora there. Is there any ramification for us?
Why do I need to recalibrate? I mean, how is this in any way affecting my relationship with Iran and my relationship with the Saudis? I mean, both relationships are doing well. Both relationships in the last 10 years have got much more attention than they got in the previous 20 years, and their governments understand that. So I'm doing quite well there, thank you.
So, since you mentioned that, just as China's equity has grown, so has India's, would India want to attempt to try and play peacemaker between Russia and Ukraine?
Look, it's not that simple. I would say it's natural for India, if a situation arises where we can be helpful, of course we would like to be helpful. But, to say we would like to be helpful, to say would you like to play peacemaker, that's like a very high bar that you're setting. I'm not sure the conditions right now, in any case, would even justify such an expectation. But again, look, the messaging which Prime Minister has given both to President Putin and to President Zelensky, I've been with him in most of his conversations, is that, in our view, there should be a return to the negotiation table. If there is anything we can do, let me know. We are willing to do what we can. But we don't want to, force ourselves or insert ourselves in a situation which is not ripe for such a thing.
You can either confirm, deny, or neither confirm nor deny. Is the party prepping you to contest the Lok Sabha election next year?
I have no idea.
That's not part of the options, by the way.
It doesn't follow any of your... my Rajya Sabha is due this year.
Oh, nice.
So I would suggest watch my Rajya Sabha.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S Jaishankar.